Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A spell of strong winds and heavy rain clears southeast overnight, followed by strong winds and a much colder feel with frequent showers arriving from the north and northwest. We're already seeing those showers move into the north and west during the rest of Tuesday into the start of Wednesday. This area of rain clears through, followed by further spells of rain or showers into the early hours. But the wind is changing direction. That's going to make it feel cold, even if it's not a widespread frost because of the air being stirred up by the wind. It will be a chilly start to Wednesday, cold enough so that these showers into Scotland will be falling as sleet and snow in places, especially above 100 or 200 metres, settling over the hills of northern Scotland. At lower levels, certainly as we go through the day and things warm up slightly, we'll see mostly rain and hail coming through, but continued snow over the higher parts of Scotland and higher parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, North Wales as well. Showers pushing into the Midlands, Southern England as well first thing. Some reasonable sunny spells, however, bright skies for many compared with Tuesday's grey. And we'll see some sunny spells extend across most parts of the UK in between these frequent showers. The showers will be most frequent across western Scotland, northwest England, North Wales and Northern Ireland. And they'll be accompanied by this cold and gusty wind. So although the thermometer will read 8 to 9 Celsius in many places, it'll feel more like 3 or 4 degrees in that northerly wind. Thursday starts off with lighter winds, but with more extensive clear spells and a frost fairly widely. Then, as we go into the afternoon, things start to turn cloudy from the northwest with some outbreaks of mostly light rain arriving. Friday, further spells of rain followed by showers, some bright spells into the weekend.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Everything you need to enjoy a super summer could be on us this year, as you could drive away with this very latest Benivan 4-berth camper van. This camper van is fully equipped with its own kitchen, bathroom, dinette and plenty of storage. We'll also get your summer sorted with a further £25,000 in tax-free cash that you could spend however you like. For another chance to win a camper van and cash, text prize to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB20 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of May. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight.
Smacks of an enormous complacency.
Well, this smacks of the fact that for years there was underinvestment by the last government and the stripping out and hollowing out of our armed forces.
Had 18 months
copyright
to deal
Ben
with that.
Wallace.
But Tampa, Britain is defenceless. That's why former military chiefs have declared. So, what is the Prime Minister going to do about it? Well, he appears to be putting off committing to a defence spending promise. The head of the Metropolitan Police has said the force is investigating links to yesterday's arson attack in a Jewish area of North London to the Iranian state. How worried should we be? Also,
I look down on him because I am upper class. I look up to him because he is upper class. But I look down on him because he is lower class. I am middle class. I know my place.
that sketch starring Ronnie Barker, Ronnie Corbett and John Cleese was shown on the BBC in 1966. Well, 50-odd years on, 60 years on, and the class system is completely different. New research reveals there are now 6 different categories rather than the traditional 3. And vet bills. They're extortionate, aren't they? Well, some of them are going to be capped. Will it end the eye-watering fees some owners face? State of the Nation starts now. I'll also be joined by my most pugnacious panel, the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and the journalist and broadcaster, Michael Crick. As always, let me know what you think, mailmog@gbnews.com. But now it's time for your favourite event of the day, the news bulletin with the senatorial Sam Francis.
Jacob, thank you. Very good evening. At 8 o'clock, your descriptions are just getting more and more accurate by the night. Well, the top story this hour, Donald Trump says the war with Iran has effectively been won, telling reporters earlier, "We have won the war." Speaking at the White House, he claimed Iran has been wiped out militarily, saying US forces are now roaming free over Tehran and can do whatever they want. The US president also said Iran has agreed it will never have a nuclear weapon, adding that negotiations are already underway to end the conflict. Well, that comes as the government here is warning the economic impact of the Middle East conflict could be significant, with fresh plans to shield households from rising costs. Rachel Reeves says oil and gas prices remain high and inflation could reach up to 3.5% in the coming months. She also announced stronger powers for regulators to crack down on companies accused of profiteering during the crisis. The Chancellor also confirmed moves to boost energy security, including investment in renewables, nuclear expansion and backing domestic oil and gas.
And I can confirm today that we are developing options to back critical energy projects with indemnities if their planning consent is challenged, so that we don't waste a single moment in protecting our energy security, because energy security is national security. Yeah. We don't yet know what the full impact of this conflict will be, so we must be agile in responding appropriately at each moment. We extended the 5p fuel duty cut, and we have pushed out the cheaper fuel finder. And from next week, households will benefit from £150 off of their energy bills, thanks to the action that I took in my budget.
Russia has launched a rare daytime assault on Ukraine, firing a record 900 in fact, and 480 drones across the country in 24 hours. In Lviv, just 40 miles from the Polish border, at least 13 people have been injured after strikes hit the city centre, including a residential building. Well, in response, Poland has scrambled fighter jets, placing air defence systems on maximum alert as Russian drones are operating close to NATO airspace. The government is under pressure over claims it's not doing enough to protect Britain from state-sponsored threats. It follows a suspected anti-Semitic arson attack in northwest London, now being led by counter-terror police. 3 suspects are believed to be involved, with officers examining possible links to a wider network, including foreign state involvement from Iran. Extra armed patrols have now been deployed across the capital to protect the Jewish community, as 4 replacement ambulances have arrived to replace those destroyed. But earlier, Nigel Farage said that the government, he thinks, is failing to act.
Prime Minister should prescribe the Muslim Brotherhood and the IRGC. There is a terror cell in North London. We saw it in action just yesterday, and yet the Prime Minister does nothing. He says he feels for the Jewish community. We want some action, and the fact these people are free to roam our streets, I'm very worried about it.
And around 1.5 million council workers have been offered 3.3% pay rise. Employers say the deal, covering staff across England, Wales and Northern Ireland, would add nearly £870 million to council wage bills, warning it will put further pressure on already stretched budgets. But unions have criticised the offer, calling it a real terms pay cut, and say they will now meet members to consider their next steps. Those are the 8 o'clock headlines. I'll be back with you for a full roundup at 9. Now, though, it's back to Jacob and his most pugnacious panel.
Well, welcome back to State of the Nation. What is happening to the state of our armed forces? We had that tetchy exchange from the Prime Minister yesterday when, having promised to increase expenditure, he won't say when. It's always tomorrow. It's always on the never, never. And yet, there are real risks that we are aware of. We now read in our newspapers that missiles from Iran could reach the United Kingdom, and we have no means of protecting ourselves from it. We might perhaps be able to scramble a Spitfire if there were a real emergency. No one in government seems to be taking it seriously. And it's all very well to blame the previous government, and as a former Conservative MP, I know we didn't get everything right. But they've now been in office for nearly 2 years. That is a time in which you are in charge and you can make decisions, but they failed to do so. They failed to read the strategic runes. They failed to ensure that the Navy is in the right part of the world when trouble breaks out. In a war, in a conflict that was perfectly obvious and from which and of which they ought to have had some warning if they had any diplomatic antennae at all. But finally, HMS Dragon limped along in the last couple of days, having been stuck in various other places en route. We simply don't have the ships that we need, we don't have the armaments that we need, we don't have the protection that we need, and we don't seem to take it seriously. That was the point of Bernard Jenkins' question yesterday, accusing the Prime Minister of being complacent. There is a real problem. And what is needed, it seems to me, is a strategic rethink of what we are trying to do. In the early 20th century, after the failures of the Boer War, we had the Isha Committee, which set out reforms to the way the armed forces worked together, then the Army and the Navy, to ensure that there was some way of bringing things together to make sure that there was an effective operation. It's not all about money. We spend more money than the French and seem to get less for it. It's about structures and making sure that money is well spent and that you have what you need in a world that has become increasingly dangerous. It's about an understanding of realpolitik as to what the risks are and who your friends are and who your enemies are. But we have just allowed ourselves to grow fat and flabby. We are like the Angles paying the Danegeld to the Danes, that we were comfortable, we were rich, and it was easier to pay people to go away. And in the end, the Danes won't go away unless we are safe and secure and have a proper defence policy. As ever, let me know what you think, mailmog@gbnews.com. But now I'm very pleased to be joined by an old friend of mine, Conservative MP and Shadow Defence Secretary Mark Francois, and my panel. But Mark, I'll come to you first. Mark, you were in a debate earlier on today What was being said in the House? What is the government's response to the current situation?
This was an Opposition Day debate where we get to choose the subject for debate. And the whole essence of it was the lack of urgency within the government responding to the skies darkening internationally. So, and specifically in the Strategic Defence Review that the government published last July, it says on page 43 that we must be prepared to fight and, if necessary, defeat a peer enemy, i.e. Russia or China, with allies by 2035. So the official policy of His Majesty's government is that we should be ready to fight a major war 9 years from now. The Chief of the General Staff, the head of the army, said we might have to fight the Russians in 2027. The First Sea Lord said, well, maybe a couple of years after that. So there's a complete mismatch between the government's preparedness and what our military experts are saying. And now even the Defence Committee, which is an all-party committee with a Labour MP chairing it, they went to a confidential briefing in the MOD on the 10th of March. They came out, they issued a statement and said, we must go to 3% rapidly, 3% of GDP on defence, and certainly by the end of the Parliament, which is now the Conservative position and has been for a year under Kemi. So the whole point of this debate was the government aren't taking it seriously. We've been waiting 9 months for a thing called the Defence Investment Plan, which is the 10-year plan to buy new equipment. We were promised it by Christmas, faithfully promised it early in the new year. We're in late March, no plan.
But aren't there structural problems, and it's not all about money, that what I've been hearing about the Type 45 destroyers is they have the wrong propulsion system in them, because the propulsion system was used as part of an industrial strategy, and instead of getting the American ones that actually worked, we got British ones that didn't. They're now being retrofitted, and sides of them are being cut out to put the new propulsion system in, and that this is a failure to spend money properly. Right. And though I'm on your side about spending more money,
the Type 45,
you've got to spend it properly first.
I couldn't agree. Well, Jacob, when I was on the Defence Committee, I authored a report about procurement entitled "It is broken, it's time to fix it." I think I've railed against the problems with our procurement system under governments of both colours. I mean, I could drown you in Hansards to that effect, but hopefully you'll vouch for me.
No, I will. I know you've been
your views. Look, there was another problem with the debate tonight, if I may, and this is a recurrent theme now. So we're debating, our preparedness for war. No Reform MP present throughout the whole thing. And this has happened several times lately. We debated the contribution of Commonwealth troops to the First World War. That no Reform MP. We debated the war in Ukraine. No Reform MP. And unfortunately, they don't have a defence spokesman. They don't even have a foreign affairs spokesman. They are one-club golfers. They are leading in the polls, I admit that. So they should have someone in the House of Commons who's a defence expert, who can ask questions to the Defence Secretary. They don't have anybody. That's their choice. And they just don't seem very interested in the defence of the realm.
OK, other than spending money, right, what would you do? How would you speed up getting us from where we are to where we need to be?
In a nutshell, we need to adapt a wartime mentality. We need to get rid of all the peacetime bureaucracy and red tape. We need to see what's happening in Ukraine. We need to see what's happening in the Gulf, and we need to prepare. There was a Roman military theorist called Vegetus, who over 2,000 years ago, it's a famous Latin phrase, civis pacem parabellum. He who desires peace should prepare for war in order to deter it. And we're not doing that. And our major criticism of the government tonight is there's a complete lack of urgency about their military preparedness. And even the all-party Defence Committee are criticising them. And the Prime Minister was torn to pieces at the liaison committee on this only yesterday.
Michael, what do you think the government should be doing at this stage? I mean, you're more sympathetic to this government than the rest of us on this panel.
Well, I think that, defence and foreign affairs is one area where Starmer has done pretty well. I think he's been pretty hopeless on everything else. But he was absolutely ripped apart yesterday by Bernard Jenkin. Yes. I mean, it was pathetic. It was, it was if Jenkin was the Prime Minister and Starmer was the backbencher. And It just illustrated again the sort of dithering and indecisiveness of this government. The Prime Minister should tell the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the Permanent Secretary of the Treasury and their opposite numbers at Defence that they've got to sort out by Monday morning the timetable for reaching these figures, and if they don't, then they're sacked.
It's too late, because the House rises on Thursday and then we're into purdah for the Scottish Parliament and Welsh elections. Because obviously if they publish this plan, a lot of money will get spent in Scotland at Faslane or so. If they don't publish it by Thursday, we won't get it till the middle of May or maybe even July.
Well, I'm sorry, I hadn't thought about that.
Big news. Francois agrees with Crick. The PM should bang the Chancellor and the Defence Secretary's heads together tonight and publish it before purdah kicks in, and legally they can't do it till May.
And also there's an economic aspect to all of this, because this is, would help growth. There are lots of
small businesses that are already going out of business, waiting for all of this. Absolutely true.
And it's gross irresponsibility by Starmer. I mean, I'm sorry to agree with you on this, panel. I'm meant to be here to disagree, but I'm afraid on this I can't.
Kelvin can bring in some balance. Is it reasonable for Starmer to say that the Conservatives had 14 years in office, they didn't do enough about it, they ran down the defence establishment, and they didn't get procurement right, and that Labour is now dealing with those problems, and it deserves some time with which to deal with them?
Right. Well, on that particular question, of course, it had presidents of the United States who took the role of the global policeman, and they could rely on that. Suddenly they come across actually a very sensible guy. He says, I'm not sure why I'm funding you guys and why you guys are getting a tax-free run on me, and actually you're on your own now. At that point, somebody had to say, do you know what? He's right. We should defend our own realm. And at that point, I'm afraid everything has to change, and this is why Starmer doesn't answer it. He doesn't answer it because he doesn't want to take it up to 3.5%, 4.5%, 5%, because the only spare money that's out there is actually in the benefits bill, and he doesn't want to attack the pensioners, nor the poor, nor this, nor that. Unfortunately, we've only got £1, and I want that £1, even if it was to my own personal pain. I want that £1 spent on defence, and it may be that taxes have to go up. I would be prepared to pay that tax.
Mark, do you think the country, having enjoyed the defence dividend and been quite happy, actually, that taxes weren't going up to pay for defence, or that welfare wasn't being spent to pay for defence, has now smelt the coffee and wants defence to be properly funded, even if, to Kelvin's point, it creates pain?
Well, Kelvin and I are on the same page, but I think there's some empirical evidence that says they are. So for many years, the pollsters once a month would do this question: what are the biggest issues facing the country and you and your family? And defence barely would get into double figures. Now, in the latest polls, it's third. It's even above the NHS in some of the polls. So, and it's not surprising, because if people see on their televisions night after night the war in Ukraine or a war in the Gulf, not unreasonably they start to think, well, I'm a bit worried about this. Are we as well prepared as we should be? So I think now public opinion is genuinely beginning to shift to a point where they want to see materially more spent on defence. Now, where do you get that from? Our policy, and I'm with you, Kelvin, is we should go back to the two-child benefit cap. That saves about £3.2 billion in a full tax year. And half of that should go to debt reduction, and the other half should go to growing the size of the army. So that's one very specific example. Right. But there's a wider point. We're going to have to restrict welfare spending. Dennis Healey said in the 1970s, a Labour Defence Secretary, without defence and security, you have no hospitals, you have no schools, you have nothing. And it's as true now as it was when Healey said it.
All right. Thank you very much to Mark, and indeed to my panel. In a moment, the head of the Metropolitan Police says yesterday's arson attack in a Jewish area of North London may be linked to the Iranian state. Are there more incidents popping up around the country? I'll be joined by an expert next.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too.
From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Well, you talk about historical figures. There's a couple of historical figures sat right at the side of you. I think you should stick them pair on a £5.
We're not on a banknote.
Yeah, on a £5 note, a couple of rainbows on, and Bob's your uncle. I mean, it's just ridiculous, mate. I mean, Winston Churchill, one of our greatest heroes of all time, he led us to victory. If it weren't for Sir Winston, we'd all be...
Who was that? You can't see that on your screen.
Is that you, Dobby?
That's me, Martin. He's got a better £5 note.
You look like...
Hey, they call you 30p, you're £10.
£10, yeah, I've changed my name now. Have we got Chopper and Nigel?
Hey, how come Nigel Nelson got the £50
That's inflation.
note?
That's inflation.
Excellent. It should be a euro.
No, I'm not on it.
But it's just not. It's again. It's
£10 Chopper. There you go. Thank you very much, whoever did that mischief. And by the way, Nigel Nelson should be on a euro. People like Winston Churchill stopped real Nazis, and now they call people like you Nazis, because they've lost context.
What's his occupation? Birdwatcher.
Yeah.
Listen, mate, these people need to get a grip. You know, the people in my community are incredibly proud of our country. They're very patriotic. They sing the national anthem, they fly the flag, and when they see this nonsense and this bird twitcher, whoever it is, I don't know who he is, they get really, really angry. And I'll tell you what they do get angry with, when Nigel Nelson comes out with this nonsense about, you know, our stamps and our coinage changing every so many years.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
We're not wiping out Winston Churchill. From history. No,
That's exactly what you're doing.
You're changing a banknote. It's not a big deal.
Why aren't you on this show defending Winston Churchill, saying he should be on these banknotes?
I will defend Winston Churchill.
Defend him right now.
He doesn't have to be on every single banknote.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, the mail mogs have been zooming in this evening. Jackie says this government will be raiding the RAF Air Museum in Hendon next. Well, that wouldn't surprise me. Claire says Reform aren't in government. They're not even in opposition. They're a relatively new party. How about taking a look at your own record on defence? While Henry makes a very good point. We haven't got any weapons and money for our defence because we've given it to Zelensky, which probably a perfectly sensible thing to have done, but perhaps we should have restocked. So the Rozzers are in the news. The Metropolitan Police has confirmed it is investigating a possible Iranian link with yesterday's arson attack on 4 Jewish community ambulances in North London. A shadow Islamist group, which appears to have taken credit, had previously claimed responsibility for synagogue attacks in Belgium and the Netherlands. This anti-Semitic hate crime has raised concern that Tehran is mounting a concerted campaign of terror across Europe, with sleeper cells assembling to carry out heinous attacks in the name of Ayatollah Mojtaba Khamenei. Well, to find out what's going on, to explain these so-called sleeper cells, I'm joined by Emma Schubert, a research fellow at the Henry Jackson Society think tank. Emma, thank you for coming in. It's very difficult to unravel what is happening at the moment. What do you think it is? Who do you think was behind the attacks yesterday? And is it directly Iranian money, or are there other intermediary groups?
So in terms of what we know, Israeli intelligence has come out and said explicitly this is a jihadist, IRGC-backed group that is acting in the name of the IRGC on British soil and across Europe. So in terms of evidence to support that claim, we know that the logo of this group is awfully similar to the logos of other Iranian proxies like Hezbollah. We also know that the operatives themselves who seem to have committed this attack and produced a video of it, which quickly disseminated across IRGC channels, which is classic IRGC proxy behavior. Those individuals seem to be inexperienced, pretty amateurish. The videos included Arabic text, which was rife with Arabic spelling errors, a lot of elementary Arabic spelling errors as well. So we know that the IRGC likes to use inexperienced locals to sort of keep their hands clean. It's a low-cost way for them to attack Brits on British soil. So to me, this seems very, very likely it's IRGC.
When we talk about these low-cost attacks, what sort of people are involved? Are they petty criminals who belong to criminal gangs? Are they religiously motivated? How do they get recruited?
All of the above. So it can be local criminals, local gangs, often drug-related. It can be radicalized individuals. It also can be sleeper cells that are already in the country. And a common misconception with sleeper cells is that they're all here ready to sort of start some sort of violent attack. That's not necessarily true. Sometimes they have tasks that seem benign on the outside, like they might be here to scope out soft targets. I think just 2 weeks ago, 4 Iranian individuals were arrested for alleged surveillance of soft targets.
So they could be people who are already here.
Yeah.
They could be people who have come into the country recently.
Mm-hmm.
Could they be people who've been here for decades? Should we be really suspicious and concerned? What's the level of concern that is proportionate?
Well, given that the IRGC is obviously in crisis, we know that these kind of regimes rarely go away quietly, so we should expect them to lash out, as they already have done. We also know that since 2018, 25,000 Iranian nationals entered the UK via small boats. So I think it's unrealistic to think that none of them were acting in the interest of the Iranian state. So I think we should be very concerned about all of that.
And do they have a community to retreat into? Because when the IRA was active, the terrorists could go back into the community, which even if they didn't want to be involved in terrorism, didn't want to hand over, didn't want to squeal on their own members of their community, of co-religionists in reality.
Yeah.
Is that a problem with this as well? Are they able to be absorbed into local communities?
I think, without a doubt, we have a serious sectarian problem in this country. Very low oversight, it seems, of the Islamist movements that are taking hold within this country. MI5 has been very explicit that it's about 75% of their caseload is Islamist extremism. So I think it's very obvious that they can just sort of retreat into their communities.
And how good is our intelligence, MI5, I would imagine, particularly, in infiltrating these organisations? Sometimes the security services say, well, this terrible thing has happened, but by the way, we've stopped 20 in the last year.
Right.
Have we had any indication of what may have been stopped?
Well, I think one positive indication, although I think you should be cautiously optimistic, is that no one's died yet, although it's unclear to me if the Manchester jihadist was somehow linked. Maybe he was an individual who was independently radicalized, but it's unclear. I think we should be very concerned about the quality of intelligence in this country, given that this current Labour government has ostracized the Israelis, and the Israelis are a huge source of intelligence regarding IRGC attacks on British soil. So I think that's something we should worry about.
And we should be more concerned about these sort of attacks than lone wolf attacks, because they can be more coordinated and they can use more powerfully destructive weapons and explosives.
Exactly, and they're usually better trained. So they might get trained overseas and then come here. They might be trained here. So absolutely, to your coordination point, this is something to worry about.
Well, let me bring the panel in. Kelvin, what does the government do about this? It seems to me to be very difficult to stop, but it's a warning that we are involved in this war, whether we like it or not.
Well, the first thing I would do is I would go and hire everybody in Mossad and get them to come over here and infiltrate and do what they did to the people, to the good people who used to be running Iran. And I'd like to see them do that over here. You can imagine Starmer's reaction to wiping out...
Lord Hermer might not be too keen on that
well,
either.
perhaps he could go as well. But on a serious note, I'm puzzled by the fact that can this really be that there are effectively the Iranian government are hiring petty sort of probably drug-organised criminals to actually carry out what can be enormously serious. Anything could have happened, even in that explosion. Somebody could have been walking past with their families or whatever, and boom, they could have been killed. I find that a puzzle, to be honest.
Let's try and narrow down what type of criminal gangs they are. I mean, these aren't the traditional East End gangs that we've been aware of from the 1960s. Right. Are they Muslim gangs?
Predominantly.
Predominantly, but we've got to split that point out. Michael, the difficult question, I think, for you is that the government's relationship with Israel has become testy, and you are quite critical of the Israeli government. Do you think it's actually in our national interest to be closer to Israel for our own security?
Well, I think you've got to take everything in the round, haven't you? You can't just sort of say, well, we're worried about annoying the Israelis if we are much more critical of what they've been doing on Gaza. And if we annoy them, they won't cooperate with us. You've got to balance these things.
But have you, frankly? Yes. Isn't our interest British citizens? And if British people are at risk?
No, we are human beings as well.
Yeah,
the interests of the 70,000 people now, even the Israeli government admits, were killed in Gaza. And the way the Israelis behaved there was abominable. We were right to say, we were right to criticise them. I think we should have criticised them even more.
Surely the concern of the British government should be for the British people. That's its job.
No, not 100%. No, it should be. Obviously, a government should be to take the interests of its citizens.
We need Israel. We need the Iron Dome. That's the main thing I would like Israel to give to us.
Michael raised an interesting point. I think the job of the British government is to defend the British people above and beyond everything else.
Right.
Where do you stand on this? Where would the Henry Jackson Society be?
Well, if the British government is not going to be standing predominantly for the British people, then who is standing for the British people? I don't really understand.
And you've got to remember that many of the people killed in Gaza will actually have relations here as well. I mean, that's
something to worry about, given the fact that we know that most people killed in Gaza were active terrorists of some kind. So are you suggesting
you're saying that the 70,000 people killed in Gaza were all active terrorists?
I'm suggesting that the civilian to combatant ratio in Israel was one of the best we've ever seen in modern history. And so you're telling me that if an individual who is killed, most of these individuals who were killed are combatants or contributed in some way to October 7th.
What of the 70,000 people killed in Gaza, what proportion are combatants, in your view?
Anyone who participated in October 7th.
No, will you answer the question? What proportion are combatants? I mean, you've made a very surprising statement there, and I'm making the point.
7,000 figure.
This is in the interests of lots of British people. You'll find, I mean, even take, there are well-known people in this country who've had relatives killed in Gaza, and so therefore it's not a simple case of our interest and Israel's interests and the interests of the people of Gaza. They're all entwined. And as human beings, as a Christian, we should be concerned about the interests of humanity as a whole.
We should be concerned about what we can do things about. Yeah. And what we can do about it is protect our own people. We can't do anything about Gaza. We've got to be realistic about this.
Well, anyway, we have a moral duty, and you know more about that sort of thing.
Unfortunately, and I can talk about just wars as well, but unfortunately, Emma, thank you very much. Panel, thank you very much. We've got to move on, because coming up, what class do you consider yourself to be? And are you a top Tory toff watching this programme? Well, the answer to that has changed, as the traditional 3 categories are no more. There are now 6, and I'll explain more in a moment.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews travel destinations forecast.
A mixed picture weather-wise across southern Europe through tomorrow. We do have some showery rain affecting Greece. None of that looks especially heavy, and it is clearing away. Meanwhile, towards Italy, whilst tomorrow's looking largely dry, Storm Deborah is going to arrive overnight and into Thursday, bringing heavy rain, strong winds, even some significant mountain snow. Meanwhile, towards the Canaries and Madeira, well, it's been very unsettled recently. A shift in the wind direction does mean parts towards the southwest will be a bit more sheltered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews travel destinations forecast.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A spell of strong winds and heavy rain clears southeast overnight, followed by strong winds and a much colder feel with frequent showers arriving from the north and northwest. We're already seeing those showers move into the north and west during the rest of Tuesday into the start of Wednesday. This area of rain clears through, followed by further spells of rain or showers into the early hours. But the wind is changing direction. That's going to make it feel cold, even if it's not a widespread frost because of the air being stirred up by the wind. It will be a chilly start to Wednesday, cold enough so that these showers into Scotland will be falling as sleet and snow in places, especially above 100 or 200 metres, settling over the hills of northern Scotland. At lower levels, certainly as we go through the day and things warm up slightly, we'll see mostly rain and hail coming through, but continued snow over the higher parts of Scotland and higher parts of Northern Ireland, Northern England, North Wales as well. Showers pushing into the Midlands, Southern England as well first thing. Some reasonable sunny spells, however. Bright skies for many compared with Tuesday's grey. And we'll see some sunny spells extend across most parts of the UK in between these frequent showers. The showers will be most frequent across western Scotland, northwest England, North Wales and Northern Ireland. They'll be accompanied by this cold and gusty wind. So although the thermometer will read 8 to 9 Celsius in many places, it'll feel more like 3 or 4 degrees in that northerly wind. Thursday starts off with lighter winds, but with more extensive clear spells and a frost fairly widely. Then, as we go into the afternoon, things start to turn cloudy from the northwest with some outbreaks of mostly light rain arriving. Friday, further spells of rain followed by showers, some bright spells into the weekend.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB Loyalty Points is here. They're our way of saying thank you for spending time with GB News. Through commenting on your say, voting in You Decide polls and shaping the debate, you can earn GB Loyalty Points. Unlock rewards, reach milestones and climb leaderboards. Don't just watch our programmes, come and be part of them. Get started by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/loyalty points.
For centuries, British society has been split into 3 classes, working, middle and upper. Well now, a new study by opinion research firm Public First says that there are 6. The left behind, the dreamers, the just about managing, the quietly comfortable, and the ambitious high earners, and the elite. Well, to explain more, I'm joined by political analyst James Frayne. James, first of all, thank you very much for joining me. Can you explain why you found it necessary to move from 3 to 6 categories?
I think there's been so much change in British society that we knew and loved and hated has just become very dated. So, you know, in the past, the working class was made up of large numbers of people that worked in traditionally manual jobs. They might have done anything from mining to certain forms of unskilled work. A lot of that has just completely gone now. Obviously, the mines have closed, factories have closed. Whole of working class culture has completely changed, turned on its head. We've had vast numbers of people entering universities. We've had large numbers of women entering the workforce. And of course, it's also obvious to say that we've had large amounts of immigration too, both over the course of the last sort of 40, 50 years, but even over the course of the last 10. And it means that that sort of class system that was partly based on economics, but partly based on, you know, a sort of sense of, you know, snootiness and all the rest of it, that's just doesn't fit the modern world anymore.
And it has political consequences, doesn't it? Because The Labour Party, Keir Starmer, son of a toolmaker, Angela Rayner, working-class girl, are very keen to establish their image as being working class. Are you saying that's old hat, that that's outdated?
Well, I mean, the extraordinary thing about modern politics is that the people that are the most reliable Labour voters these days tend to be the richest. So certainly in this study, for example, you talk briefly through those two classes, and you mention the two sort of the most affluent classes, if you like, the ambitious high earners and the elites. They are by far the most likely people to vote Labour. So if you're in the elite group, you're 40% of that group are voting Labour or planning to vote Labour. Same with the ambitious high earners. Whereas once you start getting down into the more working class groups, into your left behinds, for example, Reform are leading the way. So politics, to some extent, has become inverted, where if you like, your posher citizens are voting for parties that were perceived as being more working class, whilst your more working class voters are voting for right-leaning parties, which obviously traditionally have been associated with sort of better off people.
All right, James, thank you very much for joining me. I've now got my panel with me. Kelvin, if we go back to when you were editing The Sun, it was clearly a paper for working class people.
It was, yeah.
All of whom supported Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah, white working class as well. So these were actually van drivers, plumbers, brickies, carpenters. And actually, for some inexplicable reason, The Sun decided to give them up, and today it sells 1/10. But that's also because there's a change. There's just a change out there. You can come from any background and vote any way you like now, whereas it's quite clear that when you came from a certain background in the past, you were going to vote in line with your working class credentials or your wealthy credentials, one or the other. That has all gone. It's a great thing, and you can't be sure now, with the exception of people who wear double-breasted jackets when they appear on television, which class they belong to.
Well, up to a point. I mean, there's always a substantial part of the working class that, for either religious or patriotic reasons, voted Conservatives. And the Conservatives cottoned onto this in the late 19th century, and that's why a large number of Conservative governments were elected, I mean, predominantly Conservative governments. And, of course, there was a large chunk of the middle class that voted Labour or Liberal. So it's a complicated picture. It is changing. It's going to change even more now, I think, with all these middle-class people going to universities, getting degrees, and then suddenly find they cannot get jobs that fit with their degrees. They're going to have to do something more menial.
What about the migrant? See, I'd be interested. I understand the white thing, forwards and backwards. Yeah. OK, absolutely get that. The person you most hope to sit next to at any kind of dinner party is a plumber. Right, the person you don't want to sit next to is, if they still exist, is a bank manager. Right, boring as hell, all the rest of it. What about in migration terms, where, for instance, you take the Indian doctors or the doctors from any background, you want to be associated with them or you don't, or are they more, if they're Muslims, they're probably 80% certain to vote Labour, even although their background may now be they're well educated, they have decent jobs. I mean, it's very interesting to see what happens on the class system where they come from.
Well, it's very interesting, this divide in the quiz that you can do between economics and culture. Yeah. Because you and I fell into the same thing. Yeah. Because I'm doing GBNews the whole time, I don't go to the theatre or the opera, and I don't play tennis. So I did very badly on the cultural things, but I didn't do altogether too badly on the other side of it. Where did you come, Michael?
Well, I did the quiz, but it wouldn't give me an answer because I refused to subscribe to the Telegraph.
You don't subscribe to the Telegraph?
No, but I'm sort of, perhaps a slightly more on the cultured side. I'm even going to a play next week in which Kelvin appears.
Absolutely. You're going to the same play. Come on.
Well, somebody playing Kelvin appears.
It's involved the battle between Rupert Murdoch and Brenda Dean over Wapping. Oh, yeah. And so I meet the playwrights, and they say, the playwrights were introduced to me by Michael, by the way, and they said, well, how do you want to be viewed? I said, I don't care, make me as vile as you like. Well, Michael has now read the script, and he said that Murdoch emerges rather well out of it, but you are defined in rather a cruel cruel manner.
Oh dear, well, I would suggest to GB News viewers you'll be much better off viewing me, because I'm going to be treading the boards for 5 shows later in the year. Anyway, in a moment,
I'll charge you for that, you know.
extortionate vet bills may be a thing of the past as prescription fees are to be capped. I'll be joined by the Lib Dems' very own Dr. Doolittle next.
As soon as it hits 11 and the headlines come in,
Late Edition brings you the breaking news from all the front pages.
because the news is going to happen.
So get a head start today.
Patrick Christie's tonight, Late Edition.
Alex Armstrong tonight, Late Edition. From 11 o'clock every night.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray. Are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get this on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines. The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it? From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos. I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie's tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every week there are stories that shape the national conversation.
Well, to be discussing that.
And on Saturday Morning Live, we break them down.
Is that true? This is fascinating, isn't it?
The politics, the headlines, the debates everyone's talking about.
And the questions that you want answered.
Do you think that was a legitimate attack for him to make?
What led you to set up this fantastic movement?
You know what? It's a great question, Olivia.
So what are you waiting for?
Your weekend starts here. Saturdays at 10 a.m, only on GB News.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Any pet owner will know the painful feeling of being presented with a huge bill after their beloved animal has been treated by a vet. Well, finally something's being done about it. The Competition and Markets Authority, the competition watchdog, is capping prescription fees at £21 and will compel businesses to publish price lists for services. I'm joined now by Danny Chambers, a Liberal Democrat MP for Winchester, who is also a vet. Danny, thank you for coming in. When I was an MP, I used to get letters from constituents who felt they were being very badly treated by not the individual vets, but by the, frankly, private equity that bought up all the vet companies and seemed to be running a monopoly. Do you think that's a fair understanding of the picture and that the Competition and Markets Authority's broadly got this right?
I think we hit the nail on the head in that prices have gone up a lot. And it's a really emotive subject, isn't it? If you've got a much-loved pet, which is often a member of the family, and I'm just thinking of examples that people forget how much people care about their pets. And that might sound like a stupid thing to say, but just to give you an example, I remember once treating a little Bichon Frise, which is a little white fluffy dog, belonged to this massive guy. He came in like tattooed, he's ex-Navy, massive. And he sort of think, why has he got a little white fluffy dog? And it turned out that it had been his wife's dog, and she had died of cancer a few years earlier, and she'd asked him to take care of this dog, and he had done, you know, for tenderly and diligently for years. And we had to euthanize that dog, and he was in absolute pieces. And that was his last connection to his wife. You know, this is what people's pets mean to them. And when bills go up like they have done over the last few years, and veterinary care becomes less affordable, this is obviously heartbreaking for owners, but euthanizing an animal due to veterinary costs, because the owner can't afford it, is really upsetting for vets as well. And it's really distressing, and they're the cases people remember, you know, the cases that could have been treated, but there wasn't enough money. So the current system where veterinary prices have gone up isn't working for owners, it's not working for vets, and it's, you know, it's bad for animal welfare as well.
Do you think that people expect too much of vets, that they expect their pets to live beyond their natural lifespan, and therefore there's an enormous pressure for medical treatment that isn't actually going to be good for the pet in the longer run?
It's a good point that veterinary medicine has advanced even since I graduated. I was a vet for about 15 years before I got elected. And, you know, MRI scans and CT scans were quite rare when I graduated in sort of 2008. And now many practices can offer this kind of treatment, which is, so the advances in veterinary medicine and the drugs available are significant. But what this comes down to is having a really good relationship with your vet where you can trust them and they can communicate well with you to ensure that you're getting the right treatment for you and your pet. So if you came to me, you have dogs, don't you?
Yes, indeed.
If you brought one of your dogs to me and you said, look, I'm not made of money, the dog's not insured, I can work through with you what the best plan of action is for that dog. And it'll be good for welfare, the dog will be happy, it might not end up getting an MRI scan and a whole load of investigation, but it will be within, it'll be good welfare, it'll be what you can afford, and you won't end up feeling guilty for not being able to afford treatment. And I think it's terrible if people feel guilty that they can't afford treatment.
And what about the private equity element? Has that been part of pushing prices up, or is that just the whipping boy?
It's undoubtedly part of it, but it's a complicated picture. So private equity has taken over 60% of veterinary practices. It's been a big change in the last 10 years, and it's right that the Competitions and Market Authority look at this and make sure that there isn't any sort of opportunistic price fixing taking place. But veterinary prices, veterinary costs have genuinely gone up significantly, and the independent veterinary practices are struggling to compete.
And we all have a James Herriot view of the world, which probably isn't
exactly
very helpful to modern vets.
It's not, but it's the same sort of ethos and care that James Herriot demonstrated is what we still have now. But what I would say, one slight issue is with the prescriptions, which I don't have, you know, we all offer prescriptions. I think it's a good thing to do. If you've got an animal on long-term medication, you can get it cheaper online. But the Competitions and Market Authority don't seem to have recognised that all the online pharmacies are owned by corporates. So you make an independent veterinary practice, write a prescription, which is good for the owner, I'm not complaining about that, but you're just, you know, lining the corporate-owned pharmacies, and we're meant to be trying to generate competition.
I'm just going to get a quick word from the panel. Michael and Calvin, you both have pets, both have had big bills.
So, dog, 12, oral cancer, suggested, by the way, I'm not critical of the vet, I know the vet, right? The vet says it needs blood test and then it needs to go off to a proper surgeon or something like that. $4,000, 6 weeks later, dog dead, right? And oral cancers not covered by insurance. OK, so I'm not suggesting they're all racketeers, but that was a very uncomfortable one. The second point was competition and markets don't want your name as a private equity to be on the name of that vet, because at the moment they're all saying it's all Daffy's Vet Care and all this, whereas in fact it's somebody like Blackstone. It's a complete scam.
Michael, your cat?
Well, I was astonished at the charge for keeping the cat in overnight. I mean, it was a lot more than you'd have to, pay for a really good hotel. And, and there's a charge for euthanasia. And I just think that what the Competition Authority have announced today is really good. That you want more openness, more transparency, more telling the public up front what they're going to have to pay, instead of being suddenly faced with a bill which doesn't go into detail about how the figures are arrived at.
All right. Well, thank you very much to Danny and indeed to my most pugnacious panel. I seem to have lost all communications with Paddington, so I hope that it is now time for Patrick Crastis, because it certainly looks as if it is on the clock. Patrick, are you ready? Are you there?
I am. Thank you very much, Jacob. Tremendous stuff. Right, OK, loads on tonight. I've got a big exclusive for you. In light of the fact that Shabana Mahmood seems desperate to give the French £500 million more to not stop the boats, we have basically cracked into an illegal migrant gang's WhatsApp group. And what it reveals is, well, absolutely astonishing, really. The use of weapons, heavy weaponry, also massively pro-Ayatollah content. These are the people that were bringing people across the channel as recently as yesterday. So we've gone undercover, we've smashed one migrant gang group, and we've reported them to the police. But I'll reveal all the details later on.
Warm and cosy, with a chance of zero visibility. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A spell of strong winds and heavy rain clears southeast overnight, followed by strong winds and a much colder feel with frequent showers arriving from the north and northwest. We're already seeing those showers move into the north and west during the rest of Tuesday into the start of Wednesday. This area of rain clears through, followed by further spells of rain or showers into the early hours. But the wind is changing direction. That's going to make it feel cold.